outsourcing the A-team. You know, it's a little less sexy than beauty. I feel more beautiful just listening to it. But we're going to focus now on finance and raising money. Richard Kestenbaum is our next moderator. He's a partner and co-founder of Triangle Capital. They're based in New York. And he focuses on deals, M&A, capital raises, 10 to 200 million bucks in consumer-facing companies. Take it away.
That is what I do. Our session, however, is on a somewhat related but different topic, and I'm going to ask our panelists to come on stage now.
Do you need this?
And introduce themselves. While they're doing that, what I do is mergers, acquisitions, and capital raising for companies in transactions of $10 to $200 million. And I also write about consumer and consumer trends and retail on Forbes.com. I'm going to turn my chair a little bit so I can face our panel and see everybody. And I'm going to ask our panel to introduce themselves and give us a little background on what you do. Why don't we start right here?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Nick Giannuzzi. I'm the founder of the Giannuzzi Group, and we are a law firm based in Manhattan and in Santa Monica that is designed only to help you guys. We are dedicated exclusively to beauty, food, beverage, cannabis. Basically, we help brands go from very little to hopefully very big. We help them with all their day-to-day work. We help them with their financing, and then eventually we sell them. Recently, we've sold RX Bar. We did the Body Armor deal with Coca-Cola. Lots and lots. We sell about 10 to 15 companies a year. But our lifeblood is starting with small brands and helping them every day and with their general work and helping them grow.
Hi, I'm Andrew Lynch. I'm the co-founder of Zipline Logistics. We are a third-party logistics company built from the ground up to serve CPG brands and retailers. We operate throughout North America. We're a top 100 logistics provider in North America, and we are built exclusively to serve this exact group.
Hi, I'm Emma Clark. I work at a company called Recurly as our chief of staff. So Recurly helps consumer brands launch their subscription offerings and manage those subscription offerings, anything from how you structure your plans to payments to billing to compliance and kind of all of the things that many co-founders of consumer brands don't want to have to focus on so they can focus on building their product or service. So we work with businesses like BarkBox, FabFitFun, CauseBox, Cora, and others to manage their entire subscription offering from start to scaling it and growth. And we work with e-commerce platforms like Shopify and others to kind of make that seamless for you. So yeah.
Hey everybody, my name is Kent. I lead growth and marketing at ClearBank. So ClearBank is an alternative to venture capital, and we provide fast, affordable growth capital for growing brands. So if you're looking to raise, $10,000 or $10 million, and you don't want to give up any equity, definitely come and talk to us. And we work primarily with direct-to-consumer, online retail, subscription boxes, and yeah, thousands of founders. We fund 8 times more women than the traditional venture capitalist, and it's all done through data and fun stuff like that. So come talk to us afterwards if you're curious more.
Kent, just to expand on your background, if I may, is there a particular use of proceeds that you lend money for?
Yes, so I'd say we try to incentivize brands to spend on things that are going to help their companies grow, and because we sort of sit on top of Magento, Shopify, Stripe, all this data, we can sort of see that if you're spending it on the things you might expect, like digital ads, inventory, you tend to be better than if you're spending it on Ubers or other non-business related things, or non-growth related things. So we try to incentivize our companies to spend on inventory and ad spend.
Okay, so panel, let me ask you a question. If you're the founder of a startup consumer business, how do you identify which skills are the right skills for you to outsource?
Yeah, my perspective on that would be that it's really going to be founder to founder, right? We all come into this with different skill sets that we know naturally fit the way that we like to run our business. So, to me, when we were founding Zipline and growing our brand, we really focused on outsourcing anything that wasn't going to be customer facing, that didn't fall directly in line with our skill set. So I wrote a lot of marketing content until we were able to hire a professional marketer. But I also outsourced an enormous amount of that content generation because I knew it could be done a little bit easier.
Emma, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for some of the brands that we work on, and this is also just us being a startup that's grown over the last 8 years, we've found that the things that you, as a founder, are not necessarily either going to have a tendency towards knowing you may not have expertise in now. That's fine, but if you also know yourself well enough to know, I'm probably not going to learn this on my own. We all gravitate towards different types of skill sets, right? And so it's either not having the expertise, not having necessarily the manpower to just kind of manually hire enough people to do it, or just knowing yourself well enough to know that this isn't something I'm going to try to learn on my own. It makes more sense for me to work with others that have done this for years.
Yeah, and I think on our side, we try to coach a lot of our customers in the idea of really thinking about your superpowers. So it's pretty obvious, but if you're building a consumer brand, we've had companies that outsourced what we consider to be really key things, hey, we've got this great idea for a candle, and we're just going to outsource it to a company to design this candle, and then all of a sudden there's 500 clones of their candle on Amazon, and they're wondering why their sales are down. So, I think that you have to really pick your superpowers, and here we have Nick on stage is clearly a lawyer superpower, so unless you're a lawyer, you probably would want to talk to Nick than trying to do all that stuff yourself. And I think that it's just kind of advanced common sense that these key pillars that you think are going to become commodities, you definitely don't want to outsource because they're going to become commoditized even faster if you do that. So we're really looking to coach our brands to really keep that, whatever their superpowers are, keep it really close to their chest, and then start experimenting, outsourcing everything else.
So Kent, you're kind of leading to my next question, which is there anything you've seen entrepreneurs outsource that you say, oh, that's a bad idea? Or related to that, are there any things you think should never be outsourced, whether you've seen it or not? Yes, Nick.
Yeah, the thing that drives me crazy is when there's a important trade show or event, Expo West, and you're walking through, it's one thing when you're walking through the booths that are 80 by 80, the company's doing $1 billion in sales, and the people there are either lower level entry employees or outsourced. But when you walk by a small booth of a company that's supposed to be working hard and growing and being all in, and the founder isn't at the booth, to me, that is a complete lack of brand sense. You have to always be the brand. So as a founder and CEO or top of the management team, you need to remember that you're always selling and you always have to embody the brand. So to be at those moments in time, that important meeting with the retailer, that important show, the first meeting with outside money, whatever it is, it has to be you. There's no outsourcing that. It is immediately a turnoff to the other side. Immediately they know that there's something that's not quite right.
I think it also depends on whether or not we're talking about outsourcing as people and skill sets or technology, and how you support folks purchasing and you distributing and selling your product, right? So there are going to be things that, for example, your brand and you being the face of your brand is never something you want to outsource, but looking at how you might outsource in the sense of thinking about technological solutions to handle your manual processes, I don't really see usually that many downsides to that. And that's really what we talk about, and where we come in is saying there's no reason why you should be spending time and money on manually, if you have someone who you want to sell your product as a subscription, manually, charging that person every month. That's not a good use of your time. A much better use of your time is being the face of your brand. So why not look for either expertise or again technical solutions to try to do that. So I'm thinking about outsourcing in multiple different ways.
Well, yeah, and I think, I don't know, show of hands here, who here has read the 4-hour work week? Right? Yeah, and I think there was a lot. Remember, that was 20 years ago or 15 years ago too, and I think that it was a different world back then, and I get worried when we see a lot of founders who are talking a lot about building these Muse products and outsourcing everything, and it's like, it doesn't, parts of that just don't work anymore because you have competition who's going to be so much better if they don't outsource some of these key things. So I think as long as you, so even talking about trade shows, I mean, we made the conscious choice to go to a lot less trade shows, but send our top people to trade shows because we could have outsourced that, months ago or years ago, but we decided not to. Whereas, for us, like, we're joking, like, we're outsourcing the CFO because you can basically put your fundraising and capital on autopilot with us, where you start to realize where the friction points really are in your business. But I don't know, I get really worried when people are trying to outsource everything. I think that might have worked 15 years ago. It's not going to work. It's not going to work anymore.
So picking up on that, Andy, let me ask you, do you think that not including your specialty, and everybody else chime in too, not including your specialty, do you think that outsourcing is an increasing trend or a decreasing trend?
I see it as an increasing trend, not necessarily in the sort of negative way of people sort of trying to live the 4-hour work week. But I see it as a more recurring trend because we see a lot more visibility, a lot greater transparency through technology and communication functions, where I think that a lot of areas where you might have been a little standoffish to outsource 10 or 20 years ago, you can be a little bit more comfortable because you can really be tied in via data.
Also, if you look back, I've been doing this quite a while in this industry specifically, and you guys are all really, really lucky because 10 years ago, there weren't great people to help you win. There were some outside service providers. A lot of them were not very good at what they did. They weren't very experienced, and there wasn't sort of the full, there wasn't sort of an expert in every area where you could get help. The world's completely changed. The industry has changed. The little guys like us are taking over for the big guys, and as a result of that, there's a groundswell of support. People like myself and these guys, a lot of these disciplines, a lot of the sort of, there was no law firm 10 years ago that was dedicated only to what you guys do, and now there is. And so there's a more of an opportunity to outsource to people that know exactly how to do the specific thing that you need, much more so than 10 years ago. And so you guys just have to be selective as to when to do it yourself and when you can really leverage off that outside experience.
Emma, were you going to say something? Okay, so not including, once again, not including, you had that look on your face like, I have a lot of knowledge in here. So not including the specialty that you all have individually, thinking about it more conceptually, when is the right time, or how should a founder think about when to bring outsourced skills in-house? How do you tell when it's the right time to say, I should hire people to do this now?
I mean, a few years ago, I started an online brand myself, and I've got 2 kids and full-time job, and was up till 2 o'clock in the morning packing boxes. And I'm from Canada, so we use Canada Post, and it's way slower than anything you guys have down here. And after doing that for about 3 weeks, it's like, hey, I should probably outsource this. Like, I don't want to be up till 2 a.m. There's nothing special about what I'm doing down here. It's kind of cool. I feel like I'm really building something. But anytime you're doing something over and over again and you're feeling the pain of, why am I doing this over and over again and I'm not the best person to do this, that to me is the clearest sign for a brand to outsource something very much like the 24 or the 4-hour work week. But again, I lived through that hell for a good 4 months until I realized, okay, no, now's the time to really do it. So I think it is a matter of timing and what you're sort of willing to tolerate.
I think the other thing too is, and we see this a lot, if it starts to get in the way of your engagement with your own customers. So again, depends on what you're outsourcing, but if you start to see a negative impact by outsourcing that function and you realize, hey, if we bring this in, we actually can improve the customer experience in some way, and especially in those customer-facing functions, right? So For us on the stage, a lot of what we specialize in are actually really internal functions. Well, logistics is actually set for you. It's customer facing. So 3 of the 4 of us, I'd say, it doesn't mean that we don't interact, with your end customers, but you have to think about it in terms of what are the things that you're outsourcing that might have a customer impact, and what are those that are just around the internal operations of your business. And I think those have different inflection points for when you decide to bring those in-house, or when you have those in-house and you decide to outsource them. And I think the one with more urgency usually tends to be and should be, because you're here at FounderMade, generally the brands that are here are really focused on your end user and building loyalty. That's what you end up prioritizing, whether it's a best decision for you to outsource it or to bring it in-house because you want a better control over that customer experience. Something like logistics, of course, that is very complicated and not something that you can generally do in-house, but I'm sure there are ways that you make sure that folks are connected to the end user experience.
Yeah, even some of our most successful brands that have brought logistics functions in-house, most of the time it's sort of a combined customer service / logistics role. And you'd be surprised at how large a company can scale with someone who's sharing the title customer service and logistics manager. They're extremely interrelated. And it's a great way to make sure that you're not trying to deliver an out-of-the-box experience to someone who asks for something kind of tailored.
So thinking again about specialties outside of your own, thinking about it more high level and generally, this is a tough question. I don't know if you can have an answer, but how should a founder think differently about choosing their outsourced people as opposed to the people that they hire? Should they have different criteria for those outsourced people? What should they be looking for? We all have our own way of interviewing, and it's both an art and a science. What about the process of finding outsourced people? When you have a choice, how do you choose?
I kind of have this theory that whether you realize it or not, you're running a values-based business. That people are buying your values, you're selling your values. And I think when it comes to choosing an outsourced partner, you really have to align on a value set. And that doesn't mean, integrity or something like that. It means, are we valuing a tailored customer experience? Are we valuing, enhanced communication protocols? But align those values first before focusing on really anything else.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's so we partner with a lot of great companies, and for us, it's just all about track record. So, I mean, looking at the panel here, you can go to all of our websites, and you can see all the companies that that we work with and that we fund. And anytime someone is not willing to make an introduction to basically their entire list of customers to vet them, that's the telltale sign. So we just look for. And again, it sucks when you're just getting started. I mean, Nick and I were talking before, someone took a chance on Nick a long time ago, and it worked out pretty well. And sometimes you need sort of that lucky break to get started in these sort of outsourced servicing industries. But after that, as long as you're building your brand and you're doing it, then all you are really riding on is your reputation and your track record. Because it's so easy now for someone to say they can help you with all this stuff, and really, maybe they read a blog post and then decided to create a company. And you don't want to get sucked into all that crap, really. You want to pick people who will introduce you to every single one of their customers, good and bad, and really let you see, why. Here's to sharpen that point. Everybody should tell you who their customer isn't. I mean, I can tell you right now if you're going to be a fit for us in 2 minutes. And it's not because I don't like you. It's because I know who we can really provide value for and who we can't. So if they can't tell you who their best fit customer is, you probably don't want to work with them.
Yeah, just following up on that point, I always tell my young lawyers that, one, we have to do a good job on the work, and 2, we can't ever miss a deadline. We can't ever be slow. We can never fail to follow up, because in a week or a month or the next day, that client's going to be at a trade show, and they're all going to be sitting in an audience, or they're going to be sitting at their booths, and everybody's going to talk to everybody. And it's not okay for our client, if asked, hey, who's your lawyer? Are they any good? We want our client to have us in their head, so they go across the aisle and they say to the person across the aisle, hey, if you're not working with Nick and his team, you're making a mistake. And what's again amazing, I'm in love with our industry. What's amazing about this industry is when you go to outsource something, you don't have to guess anymore. The information is readily available. If you turn to the people around you or you walk up and down the aisles, you can get the answers about all of us and anybody else. So the information, if you do a good job, is almost perfect as to what kind of services you get, what kind of responsiveness, whether people are having good user experiences or not.
One of the things you're alluding to that we haven't talked about explicitly is the availability of information based on technology. You used to have to be an enormous business in order to have access to the resources to service your client, but now with technology, the playing field is more level for smaller players. That allows outsourced companies to be nimble and smart and still be effective without being a behemoth. And I think you're all kind of circling around that point a fair amount. Okay, let me talk about an untouchable topic that we should never discuss on a panel in public, your compensation. Would you ever, what would you advise a founder for whom cash is always a scarce resource? Have you taken equity? Would you take equity for other outsourced resources? Have you heard of them taking equity? Can you comment on that?
I really want to hear Nick's answer to this. So I mean, so at Clearbank, I mean, we don't take equity. That's our whole thing, and obviously we do that to protect you, and we feel like, you know, you pay us a small fee for our service, and that's going to be good enough for us. But at the same time, again, I would just, and I'm sure you all have horror stories of, gosh, I've been a paper millionaire, you know, 50 times over for doing a lot of spec work on equity, and you know, none of it panned out. So I actually love to hear what Nick says, because I'm curious. I'm curious in your kind of profession how you deal with that.
So I've been doing this quite a while, and I've tried almost everything, because why not? And we've tried models where we work for X dollars a month, or we try models where you give us a % of the business. And those models always just sort of make me feel very uncomfortable. And they make me feel uncomfortable because almost by definition, someone is not getting the benefit of the bargain. If you're going to pay me $5,000 a month, well, what happens if 3 months in a row I do $2,000 of work? I don't like that. If I don't work, I don't get paid. On the other hand, if I was doing $22,000 a month and you were paying me $5,000, that's not going to work. Equity to me has a similar feel. I've actually had some wonderful results where I took equity in very small companies like Vitamin Water and Smart Water a long time ago, where it had a great result. And so we did that for quite a while. But then there's the question of, if you get equity, what do you get for it? And you have to value it. And so if you say, well, look, I'll give you $100,000 worth of equity, that's going to run out at some point. So I never say no, but what we tried to do with small brands, small companies, is we tried to structure our services in a way where there's complete transparency as to cost, even before we do the work. So I don't cap my bills for anybody, but if you say, hey, Nick, we have this distribution agreement, before you get started, give me an estimate, we do 300, 400, 500 distribution agreements a year. I can estimate. I'll say, oh, I think that's going to be $2,500. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. So I try to be very, oh, and by the way, we have over 1,000 brands we represent. Probably 500 of them are not doing $2 million a year in business. We work with small brands. That's our lifeblood. That's the lifeblood of the future of this whole industry. So we have to find ways to work with them.
Anybody else?
No, that's a hard no for logistics. We take a lot of pride in being sort of easy to hire, easy to fire, right? If you don't like what we're doing, then just stop doing it. Equity makes that a challenge.
Okay, so yes, Emma?
No, I was going to say, I mean, we provide a service, and I mean, that doesn't mean that as well as you do, and it just has never really made sense in what we're trying to accomplish for our brands in terms of allowing them to grow. What we do instead is we understand that because brands are small, equity may not be an option, but thinking about how your business model is structured and how we can price so that it is not detrimental when you get up and going in the beginning. And as you scale, right, we can grow with you. But the concept of having, a little bit more, to Nick's point, flexibility when we think about some of the smaller brands, so it's not cost prohibitive for them to be able to use our services.
So a moderator is typically not supposed to answer their own question, but I will take a crack at it because there are things that happen in our business. In the mergers and acquisitions business, what you're always trying to do to make a deal is to find things that have very little value to one side and a lot of value to the other side. Find them in parallel for each one of the parties and then trade. Give away the thing that has very little value and get the thing that has value to you. And that's one of the ways, and those are one of the tools you use to try and make transactions happen. One of the things about equity when a company is young is that cash is often very scarce. We have taken equity in our compensation. It's one of the ways when we think a company has great opportunity and we have a sense that the market will highly value it, we've taken equity in the past and done well with it, and our clients have been happy to give it to us as payment because cash is so scarce. So sometimes it's just a good way, we found in our business, if it can work for you, to put a little icing on the cake. But to come back to my moderator position, do you ever feel that as an outsider, what you can say to your client and therefore what you can do for them is somewhat limited because you're not part of the company, you're not really part of the team day to day, and you don't have as much business and career risk that an employee has?
Yes.
Emma? Do you want to expand on that?
I was just going to say, yes, and that's kind of how it should be, right? So businesses that work with us, we know what sort of revenue they're generating. We have an understanding of what sort of products are working for them and which aren't, and the way that they price them and package them, and which customers are churning out, right? So based upon that and the data we have, we can give recommendations, but we don't know their brands as well as they do. They should know their customers better than we do. And I think that's the way that it should be, right? So we can bring in the expertise that we have, and our advantage, and everyone here, is that your business, right, you have a unique view into your business. We have a unique view by working with many businesses. So there's value in both of them. And I think that allows us to provide some advice and a perspective that you might not have. But again, we don't have the perspective of knowing we may know your founding story, but understanding that customer's pain point or understanding why you built the product that you did and being close with your customers and understanding why they're loyal to your product. I think those are things that, we can give guidance, but we're not going to know as well as you, and I don't think we should.
Yeah, ours is a little, Clearbank works really by sitting on top of a ton of different data sources, right? So we anonymize everything. We don't really know specific details about your business, but we actually have a lot of information, and so in this case, we tend to have a lot of impact on how we can affect businesses, because we sort of see it, to be totally honest with you, selfishly, is like when we're investing, we're riding this revenue roller coaster with you, so it's in our best interest to make sure you're as successful too, so that we get paid and we see our return. So we provide report cards. We can say, hey, you're really below average, I'm sorry, in this key metric compared to all these other beauty brands or other brands that we've seen, and can try to provide actionable ways to do it. And we actually see really high compliance because we just have so much more data, and the data really doesn't lie when you're dealing with revenues, transactions, return on ad spend, click-through performance on ads. Like, these are things that the law of large numbers will always be in our favor. So as soon as customers get comfortable with the fact that it's all anonymous, I'd say we have a very big impact on our customers' daily revenue.
Yeah, I have a very different answer. So again, just because we've done so much of the same thing for so long, anything that any client hires me for, I've already done that 20, 30, 300, 400 times. and I've seen all the various mistakes you can make because I've made them myself. So I'm really, really outspoken. That's what I get paid for. People hire me for my opinion. I tell my clients, 80% of the time you ask me about my opinion, I'm going to be 100% sure that I'm right, and 20% it'll be a gray area. And 10 years ago, I was more like a 50-50 or less, but you do something long enough. So I'm everybody's priest and everybody's rabbi. It's one of the things I love about my job. You can actually tell me things I'm never allowed to tell anybody else in the whole world. And so everybody shares everything with me, and 80% of the time, I know exactly what to tell them, and 20% of the time, we figure it out together.
So I'd like to open it up if there are questions from the floor. There's a young man with a microphone if somebody would like to raise their hand, or I can ask the panel more questions. I just don't want to miss the opportunity to get questions from the audience that people have.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Question specifically on the logistics side. So we have tried a few 3PLs and then eventually ended up insourcing, and just realized that we can do it so much more cost effectively in-house. And I'm just curious, like, what your experience with that is. Once we got our programs and everything just sort of streamlined, it's just a lot cheaper. So can you just speak to that a little bit, because it would be convenient to pass it out, but not if it's going to add that much to our.
Are you talking fulfillment?
Yes.
Operations specifically? Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one. That's not where we step. We tend to step in once someone starts meeting the type of volumes where they would be going into retail or going into distribution, so a pallet or more. So we don't do anything with parcel, but
Gotcha.
I hear that story a lot. I think that when you start seeing 30, 40, 50 orders a week, that maybe is getting outside of your capacity to do that while doing
We do 3,000 orders a month.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and it's pretty incredible that you're able to manage that in-house.
Yeah.
I see fulfillment companies like, there's a guy walking around here who I don't know if he wants me to say his name or not, so I won't, but that are optimizing shipping operations across every platform, Shopify, Amazon, everything else. And I think that when technology and visibility comes into play, and you really need those type of things for your customers, that's when you start seeing the advantage of outsourcing.
Okay, thank you.
In the back.
How do you handle when a client startup gets behind in paying you? You've got a vested interest, you care about them, you've been with them on the journey. So what do you do when suddenly there isn't cash to pay you and they say, just hold on, we'll get there?
I'll take a stab at this one. So we, when you work with us, we'll kind of project out where we think your performance is going to be based on historicals, and it happens. You have a rough month, a black swan happens, and you see a revenue dip. So as long as we know that we can pick up the phone and have a conversation with you, we're willing to obviously have that conversation and figure out, hey, what's going on? And like I said before, we're not a bank. We're not like, hey, why aren't you paying us? It's like, hey, what's up? Like, oh shit, my Facebook channel dried up, and it's like, no problem. Let's try Twitter. Let's try Pinterest. Have you tried Snapchat? So we try to figure out where you stalled, and if it's something we can help with, we'll go in and try to help you. And if not, then we have to wait until you you pay us back, basically.
Yeah, we're in the business of helping founders. That's our position in this universe. And obviously we want to get paid, but if you can't pay us today, you can pay us a little bit later. We generally, just kind of let things ride as long as we can. It's 30, 60, 90 days. But I want communication. I want people to be straight. There's nothing worse than feeling like someone's just ducking you. Then you have no sense of humor. But look, it's part of the industry. Young brands don't always have enough money to do everything they want to do. They'll probably do another equity raise in a month or 6 months or whatever. And so we try to roll as much as we can with the punches.
I think there are two kinds of answers that come with that question. One is there are circumstances that the founder or the company can't control, and that's what's causing them to be cash tight. And the other is there are decisions that the company has made that weren't so great. Some things are a mix between the two, but when your vendors, your suppliers, your partners feel that it's beyond your control, they want to work with you. When they feel that the decisions you're making are thwarting your ability to improve the business, get them paid, and advance into the future, that's a more challenging thing. Yes, in the back.
Any perspective on like your first hire for outsourcing? Obviously, legal, accounting, very necessary. For me, my assumptions are fulfillment because of capacity, and then digital marketing, social media. But beyond that, well, first off, is that assumption correct? And any other thoughts on just those first places to start outsourcing?
Sorry, first place to start outsourcing, and you're a brand? You're consumer product brand? Yeah, gosh, I mean, based on who we speak to, by far the first thing that they outsource is logistics or some kind of fulfillment, just because I can't remember who said it here, but it just takes away from the stuff that you're really good at, like that you're uniquely really good at. So that's the one that we tend to be referring out the most to partners is any kind of fulfillment.
I think a lot of it has to do with one of the most challenging things in business and one of the most challenging things in life, which is knowing yourself. And if you know yourself, and that's a hard thing to do, then your weakest things are the things you want to outsource. And companies are like people in that way. They also have strengths and weaknesses. There was another question to your side. Yes. Hold on, the mic's coming.
Hi, this is for Nicholas. Can you hear me now?
Can now, yes.
I'm next to the speaker. Hi, you talk about knowing 80% most of the time. So you help companies get sold, and I'm wondering how early on do you want to be approached by a startup and positioning themselves for a sale if that's their ultimate goal?
I think that smart founders position themselves for a sale from the day they create the company. Like the classic example, and this isn't even really a criticism of we'll spend money on legal, when we get to 3 million in sales. You may have made so many bad mistakes and done so many bad contracts, you may get to $3 million and be unsellable. So I know that there's a balance of resources, and I know cash is king, but I had a conversation yesterday with one of my clients or one of the sponsors here. I was just drinking their products, and the client was like, listen, we're not selling for a couple of years, but how do we button up for that? And we started talking about creating a data room, building out a data room when the company's young. So every contract you sign goes in there. Every complaint from a customer goes in there. You build it so that one day when you get an unsolicited offer from a strategic and they say, hey, we want to spend $175 million for your company and we want to move fast. And by the way, that does happen. You're ready. And sometimes you're thinking we won't go on the market until we're doing 50 million in sales, and you're doing 13 and someone reaches out to you. So you should be ready every single day. And I know a founder, the whole point is you're working 80 hours a week, so you can't do everything all the time, but you should be thinking about that from day one.
I want to thank our panel. This has been a really great session, and thank you for being a great audience and great questions. Have a great show, everybody.